I've just come off a long train journey from London up to Yorkshire, where I live, and I started to sort of semi-daydream, and I was thinking about the soul, and what does it really mean to have a soul? So I thought, here comes another podcast. I reckon I'm going to talk about that today. As I say, it all began with that question in my mind, and I couldn't quite shake it. It was not a loud one, it was that kind that sort of demands attention. What does it really mean to have a soul? And more importantly, what happens when we lose our sense of it? We could use the word all the time. Soul food, soul music, soul mate, we use that a lot, don't we? But somewhere between the to-do lists and the notifications, the word has thinned out. It's become something poetic that we reference to, not something that we actually live. So I set out to discover it. Not through religion, as you know, I'm a universalist. Not through ritual. I love ritual, but I thought, no, we're just going to do this through everyday life. I want to see how I connect to my soul. Do I connect through conversations, through moments, and the quiet observations that connect us to something larger than ourselves? So this podcast is about remembering, really, what it feels like to be alive underneath the noise. Now, we live in a time of constant stimulation, don't we? We scroll, we swipe, we listen, we talk, we get on trains, we run with our briefcase behind us, pulling along on our trolleys, trying to get up the escalators and then onto another train and so on and so forth. And many of us admit to feeling strangely disconnected. I spoke recently to a teacher who said, I can tell when the children have been online too long. They stop looking up. That line stayed with me because I realized so do we. We stop looking up, we lose the instinct to notice, and without noticing, oh my goodness, without noticing, we drift further and further from what that subtle inner pulse we call soul is. When we were children, the world felt alive, didn't it? Trees had personalities, clouds turned into dragons. We didn't see separation between ourselves and everything else. We were a part of everything else. And the biggest thing I noticed when I remember it, when I was out in nature, I would be present. I would be present to the bird's song and the smells of the earth, the damp earth, and the rustling of the leaves on the trees, and perhaps climbing trees. I used to climb loads of trees, falling into nettle patches, all of those things which were about real life. And then something else, somewhere along the way, we started to build walls around wonder, didn't we? We didn't see ourselves separated before, but we are separated from an awful lot now, I think, just with modern existence. But what if that sense of magic wasn't naive? What if it was the most truthful perception we ever had? It sounds simple. Presence. That's the word, presence. And yes, it does. It sounds simple to be here and now, but we're conditioned to live everywhere else, in memory, in anticipation, and our minds rehearse, replay, re-edit literally most of the day. So try this with me for a moment. Notice where you are right now. Just look around. What colour is the light? What's the smallest sound that you can hear? How does the air feel on your skin? Are you indoors? Are you outdoors? It's such an ordinary thing to notice, and yet it changes everything. When I began this exploration, I kept a notebook, and I started to write a line each day. And that line was, today I was present when, and then I just added whatever it was from that day. Could be when I tasted my tea instead of scrolling, or when I baked because I love cooking, or when I just paused, noticed my cat wanting attention and just started to stroke her. So other days I listen to a friend without thinking what to say next. Because even in my mode, I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also working in metaphysical work. So I've got clients that come, and life coaching and things like that, where my whole world is listening and listening to what they say, listening to the reason behind the need of what they're saying, and to highlight things and to throw out questions to them. But I thought today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to listen without thinking what to say next. Tiny details, but they become breadcrumbs, like a trail that leads myself back to myself. And if you try it, I think it'll be quite a revelation to you. And that's the thing. The soul doesn't shout, it waits, doesn't it? It waits for the moment you finally stop hurrying and say, I'm here. I remember having an elderly lady once for a community project, and she was wanting help with that. And then she started to tell me that when her husband died, the house was silent for months. Then one morning, she realized the silence wasn't empty. It was full. And that word full described exactly what I'd been searching for. The silence is full of presence. Stillness is full of life. When you listen deeply without an agenda, you begin to sense something that language can't really capture. Maybe it's consciousness, maybe it's energy, maybe it's love, but it's there under everything. You can feel it when you hold someone's gaze and neither of you looks away, when the music moves through you and you forget who's listening. When you step outside at night and the sky is impossibly vast, and you can see stars, or you can see whatever, satellites or whatever it is up there, the moon. The soul doesn't live in theory. It lives in those moments where awareness and wonder meet. For a week, I set myself an experiment. And each day I would practice awareness through the 5 senses, because I've just done a podcast, as you know, on the 5 senses of sight. Notice one colour. I'd never really seen before. Notice sounds, layers of sounds that I usually miss. Smell, the air between the rain, the coffee in the morning. Touch, the weight of a cup, the texture of a fabric. Taste, slow down enough to actually experience flavour. At first it felt awkward, too deliberate, doing it on purpose, but then something shifted. The world seemed to brighten at the edges. I got quite excited over this. Even the mundane tasks, washing dishes, walking to the car, took on a strange intimacy. And one thing that I thought was really strange was I wanted to stop myself making it, well, I have a milky coffee every day. I love a milky coffee at 11 o'clock. It's one of those things that, I've got to have. And when I go down, I've started thinking it, because it's always a ritual really for me, but I started to think about, how do I reach out? How do I actually pick up the bottle of milk and then put it into the pan? Being mindful of pouring it into the pan, turning on the gas, getting that milk to a boiling point that I like, then getting the coffee cup, just reaching in, picking my favourite coffee cup, picking it up, putting it on the counter, hearing the sound of putting it down on the counter, opening the coffee jar, placing the spoon in, listen to the tinkle on the glass, putting that coffee into the cup, and then pouring the frothy milk on top. It actually became quite a ritual, and I really, really enjoyed it. And that's what it's all about, really. It's noticing. We stop looking up to lose the instinct, and we lose the instinct to notice. And without noticing, we drift further from that subtle inner pulse we call the soul. So as I was doing that and looking at all the different changes, even the smallest thing, the air on your skin, it's such an ordinary thing, isn't it? But to notice it, it changes everything. So as we go into this being aware, being in the present moment, yes, as that lady said, the silent is full. It's full of all sorts of different things that we're missing out on. So slow down to actually experience flavor, experience that coffee, that cup of coffee. Actually, funnily enough, that cup of coffee for me evokes a moment that I had as a child. And I had this little friend at school, and she was quite sickly in lots of ways. She was very slim, and she had different challenges. But her mum always made her a little tiny flask. It was a little pink flask, and in there she made a very, 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 very weak milky coffee. And I remember her taking little sips of this milky coffee every morning. And because we were friends, sometimes she'd offer me a little sip of it. And do you know what? That coffee, it brings back that memory because it feels comforting and nurturing. And it brings back that lovely memory of that little friend I had when I was only possibly about 6 or 7 years of age. So, like I say, it does feel awkward and it does feel too deliberate sometimes. But then all of a sudden it'll shift. So even the mundane tasks, things like washing the pots, walking to the car, took on a strange feeling. And I realized, is the soul reclaiming territory? Is presence contagious? I think it is, And when you return to yourself, others can feel it too. They notice that you are more alive, that you are more sensitive, that you're more emotionally balanced. Conversations get deeper. Kindness feels effortless. It just happens. And life stops being something to manage and becomes something to meet. There is a saying in many traditions, as within, so without. So your outer world mirrors your inner one. I'm always talking about that, aren't I, in my podcast? But when we're unsettled, life feels chaotic. And it's true. When we're calm, even challenges start to have a rhythm. The more I practice mindfulness, the more I notice a subtle dance between my thoughts and my reality. It wasn't mystical. It's incredibly practical. When my attention's fragmented, so did my day fragment. When I gathered myself, the world gathered too. Whenever we come to the end of the year, the beginning of the year is new you, new year. We all say it, don't we? But what if manifestation simply means perceiving clearly, seeing what's already there with uncluttered eyes? So I started to ask what the soul meant to other people. One of my clients, a nurse, told me it's when I hold a patient's hand and time stops. That was really poetic, but it was also very, very emotional when she said that. I have a friend who is a maintenance man, and he does gardens and all sorts of things. And he says, when I'm on my knees in the soil and I forget where I end and where the earth begins, that for me is a bit of heaven. And I thought that was amazing too. So different words, same essence, presence, meaning love expressed through attention, maybe we could say it that way. But if we each carry a spark of the same vast energy, then every act of awareness is a sort of reunion. It's a moment of remembering. Because we belong. We belong to so much. So maybe try this sometime when you talk to someone. Really listen. Not just to their words, but to what's underneath, the reason behind the need to talk to you about something. Notice their breathing, their pauses, the small shifts of emotion, and then notice what happens to you. Your inner chatter quiets. you start to feel a space between you. That space is where soul lives. The meeting point between two worlds of experience. Even in disagreement, presence transforms the energy, and listening becomes sort of healing. Yes, it does. Listening is healing. One morning, I went walking early. I don't have a big garden, so I sometimes just go out and just walk around. We've got a lovely park across the road. And it was very misty. Everything is full of like fog or mist. So the mist was rising and the world was almost like half awake. And my footsteps sounded quite crisp against the gravel, and I could feel the rhythm of my body and the air on my face. Do you know, it was lovely. The coolness of it and the quietness of it. And it was the simplest meditation in a way, being in motion while utterly still inside. I've loved really practicing presence over this last few weeks. The more I walk, the more I realise that soul doesn't live in temples or mountaintops. It lives in ordinary mornings, just like the one I've just described. It actually lives in footsteps, in breathing, and in awareness. So after several weeks of this practice, life hadn't changed. I had. The same schedule, some responsibilities, but infused with new texture. Washing the dishes felt meditative. Conversations felt sacred. Even boredom became a signal, a reminder to return to what's around me, what's happening now, what am I feeling, what do I want, who am I? It was sort of a reminder to return to that awareness. We often talk about spiritual awakening as a lightning bolt, but maybe it's more like a dawn, a quiet, gradual, inevitable once you turn towards it. That's what rediscovering a sense of soul really is. I feel not an event, but sort of like a homecoming. And it's so exciting. So what have I learned? That the soul isn't something we find, it's something we notice. It's there when we cook, when we drive, when we're on a train, when we hold hands, when we laugh, or when we grieve. It's the awareness that runs underneath everything, all of it. And when we forget, life feels grey. When we remember, everything starts to glow again. We realise the essence of being in the present moment and of being in the now. Maybe the real mystery isn't whether we have a soul, but whether we allow ourselves to live from it. So, wherever you're listening from, whether you're on a train like I was when I first thought of this, or in your kitchen, or walking in your little space of paradise, whether it be your garden or going out like I did into that wood in the morning, take a breath. Look up and notice one thing that stirs even the faintest sense of wonder. That flicker you feel, that's your soul. It's never left. It was just waiting for you to turn your head and see it again. Thank you so much for joining me today. This podcast is free to listen to, and if you'd like to help me keep creating it, you can support the show through my Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Every bit of support means the world. And if you'd like to go deeper into your own journey, come and visit me at margaretdepetro.com. You'll find ways to book tarot readings with me, courses, Reiki and healing appointments, meditations, and lots more waiting for you there. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep walking your own beautiful path.